unashamedly human with a diagnosis that is only a part of who I am.
It's Tuesdays with Tawana. Let's get it. You ready? Let's go. Hey. What's good, beloveds? It's Tuesdays with Tawana. I am Dr. Tad, your host and your curator for this moment. It's good to be in the building one more time. Thank you for joining. If you are joining us live, thank you for listening. If you are checking in later on all of your various podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple. And yeah, I am just grateful to be this Black woman and to have this space to chop it up with you on today. We have a show for you today. So get comfortable, get cozy. It's going to be a little more than a half an hour today because usually when we have a guest, it just happens that way. So today's format will be a little different. So, of course, the comments always pop in. So whenever you pop on, add your comments, questions, concerns, say hello, and I will insert your voice into this narrative. And so our format will be a little different today. I'm going to chop it up just for about 5 minutes, and then we are going to sit at the feet of our special guest on today. Hey, Jan, what's good, beloved? Thank you for always joining and always supporting. So we're going to sit at the feet of our special guest today, and I'll introduce our guest momentarily. And then once the interview is over, because it is pre-recorded, afterward, we will, as Reverend Dr. Melva Sampson would say from Pink Robe Chronicles, we are going to talk back to the text because we are the text. Our lived experiences is sacred text. So we are going to listen to this sacred interview where this beloved is just dropping gems for such a time as this. So speaking of such a time as this, there are two things that I want to mention before we go into our interview today. Is one, Dr. Tad Enterprises, which this podcast falls under one of the pillars of my organization, where I am the founder and the CEO of Dr. Tad Enterprises. You can look me up at thedrtad.com. We are unapologetically Black. We will stay Black. We will continue to have offerings rooted in womanism, because womanism centers Black women and Black beloveds for our own liberation and for the liberation of all. So it's not another elitist thought or ideology. It is a divine movement to bring beloveds together to liberate ourselves from narcissism, capitalism, white supremacy, either or thinking, one way thinking, individualism, all of that, because we are a communal people. We are divine. And I always say, and I'm here because of it, that healing happens in community and revolution happens in community. Change happens in community. Strength and courage happens in community. So we're going to hear some gems from our guest shortly. But I just wanted to name that Dr. Tad Enterprises will not be kissing the ring of number 47, nor will we change our name or change our intentions. We are still focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we are focused on building our own, recycling our dollars, and building communities and schools and libraries and offering jobs to our own and recycling that so that our $2 trillion buying power will stay in our communities. It's going to be a long haul. It's going to get worse before it gets better. But as we are going to hear from our special guest, she's going to give us some nuggets on how to navigate through this space. So text somebody, let them know to pop in. These are some trying times, and I think we need to hear some encouraging words, especially since I must pause and speak the name of Joy Ann Reed. Beloved, you are loved. You are appreciated. You have been, for the last 5 years, you have been a powerful voice, unapologetic, courageous, brilliant, funny, full of joy, pun intended. So we need joy. So we're going to rock with you, and we're 10 toes down for you. So wherever you go, that's where we're going. I saw a social media post. I will not say the name. All those that, watched the readout, come over here and support. I appreciate the sentiment of, supporting Black programming, but give us a minute. Give us a minute to grieve. Give us a minute to, see where our beloved is going and what's happening. And, let's not jump into, now I could jump into a time slot. Be easy. Take it easy. Take it easy. And I'll leave that there. But Joy, we love you. You are loved. And I cannot wait to experience you in a bigger and badder platform, because you are a badass for sure. So let us get it popping, because our interview is about 30 minutes. And then afterward, we'll have some conversation to talk back to the text. I promise you we will be done by maybe a quarter to, maybe 10 to, unless conversations get juicy and we take it to 11 to the top of the hour. But yeah, let's get it popping, because I really want you to experience our beloved. So our guest for today is the Reverend Dr. Mitzi J. Smith. And I can't even, if you Google her, you will understand why I had to shoot my shot and say, would you bless us and be on this weekly podcast called Tuesdays with Tawana, where I am the host and the curator? And she said yes. So Reverend Dr. Mitzi Smith, born on the west side of Columbus, Ohio. Dr. Smith is the daughter of Flora Carson Smith and Fred Smith. We always speak the names of those who have come before us, our parents, our foreparents. So it was important for me to put this in this brief bio. Her academic journey reflects a deep commitment and understanding to challenging the intersections of faith, race, and gender. Dr. Smith earned a Master's of Divinity degree from Howard Divinity School with a focus on biblical studies, followed by a Master's in Black Studies from Ohio State University and a BA in Theology from Columbia Union College. She received her PhD from Harvard. So she is in good company. When I mentioned Joy Reid, I mentioned Dr. Mitzi J. Smith. As a leading womanist scholar, her prolific contributions include books, journals, articles, book chapters, essays, Bible commentaries. They all serve as a form of social justice activism, highlighting and critiquing marginalization with biblical interpretations. Beloveds, let's get ready. Get comfortable. Get your notebook. Get your note app on your phone. You are going to want to sit and just receive some of this divine beauty, this divine guidance for us, by us, for such a time as this.
What was it in you that led you down this path, and the challenges and the things that you had, the obstacles that you had to get over and get through and get around and get over? What is it about the Mitzi J. Smith that would help other Black women beloveds, womanists, Black feminists, to help push through these hurdles and obstacles that we are facing today?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, so that's a good question, particularly considering I just sent about 3 weeks ago my stroke memoir to the publisher. And that was something that really took me back to the beginning, surprisingly, in terms of someone. A lot of times before we can see something for ourselves, particularly if we've grown up poor, right, which many of us have, right, and in a racialized society, in a society that hates Black women, hates Black people, right, in a church that doesn't necessarily love Black women, despite the fact that we are the majority in our churches, right? That somebody has to also, I think it's important for us to pour into each other, to acknowledge the good in each other, to acknowledge the potential in each other, instead of everyone clamoring to be in a spot, in an oppressive environment, right? To be what we would say in broader society, the HNIG, right? But trying to be that in the Black church as well, right? And too often, women are pitted. Patriarchy pits women against each other. And so we need to be, particularly in this environment. I mean, perhaps we in many ways wouldn't be where we are if we didn't buy into the notion that somehow we had arrived, some of us had arrived, and that the rest of us who are lagging behind, there's something wrong with them. Right. And so as I wrote my stroke memoir, I also recovered stories of people who had poured into me, and particularly first my mother, right? Because one thing I say, when it comes to disease, and the genetic and non-genetic connection, right? We struggle with that, right? And I say I am my mother and I am not my mother, right? What our parents went through, what they had to struggle through, it was a lot more challenging, a lot more difficult than what we are going through, even though what we're going through right now is something many of us have never seen in our lifetimes, right? And what we're about to experience and experiencing now, we have not seen in our lifetimes, or we were small children when people were fighting for our civil rights. We were children, right? When
Mm-hmm.
when they were marching, we were children, right? And so I remember we talking about the PhD journey. My mother used to say to me, "You should go get a PhD," and I think, in what? In what? And my mother, our parents, my mother grew up in went to historically black schools, right? That's what they had, right? They couldn't get into these PWIs or these in Cleveland, Tennessee. She grew up in Cleveland, Tennessee, and went to a black school, a black high school, where she was valedictorian. Despite she had, from 8 years old, sickness that she was constantly dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then went to a historically black school funded by the Methodist Church to get I think a certificate in home nursing, right? Because they weren't allowed into regular nursing schools and so forth. Right? And then, just recalling that as I'm going through my healing journey, right, in terms of stroke, and then thinking about the therapists, here in Georgia, most of my therapists were black women, right? Um, and thinking that they had to see for me first that I could imagine for me first that I could walk again before I could.
Mm-hmm.
My mother imagined that I could do a PhD before I could. Dr. Kane Hopefelder at now deceased, but at Howard Divinity School, imagined I could be a biblical scholar before I did. Right? They said, you need to do this. And I'm like, I don't know if I can. I don't, you know. So, to think about our parents, my mother took in her historically black school, took 2 years of Latin, 2 years of French. I took no languages in high school. It wasn't until after high school when I started to think about, a calling, and then took Greek in undergraduate, and then, years later went to Howard and took Greek again, right? But otherwise, I hadn't taken other language, then took Hebrew there, right? And discovered I could do well. I could apply myself and do well, right? But all these people who said to me, "You can do this," had to imagine it for me before I could imagine it before myself, because I didn't have those models in front of me, right? I didn't have those models. And so to be the first woman to get a PhD in New Testament from Harvard, right? Black woman, I'm sorry, black woman. There were, of course, women before, white women before me, but black woman. And there had been 6 or 7 black men to get this degree before me at Harvard, but the first black woman, I don't know if there's not been another black woman to come through, right? And it wasn't easy, right? I remember being told my first time applying to PhD programs, I didn't get in. And it was a black woman with a PhD in sociology that went to Howard with me in the MDiv program, said, "You will apply again because it is very political. You will apply again." And so I applied to do 3 different schools. And I remember calling Harvard. That wasn't my choice. Harvard was not one of my choice. It was other people saying to me, "You should apply to Harvard." And calling then, remember being told by Helmut Kester, "Well, you have to have Latin before you come here." And so after receiving my MDiv from Howard Divinity, I stayed at the university an extra year and took 4 languages in a year. I took Latin reading. I'm sorry, I took Latin, not just reading. I took a year of Latin. I took French reading. I took German reading. I was already taking conversational German, and I took Middle Egyptian hieroglyphs. Howard University is one of few schools in the country that teaches, if they still do, Middle Egyptian hieroglyphs. And so all those in a year to get into Harvard, right? It still is the case that we tend to have more to prove
Well,
that we can do what is necessary to get through, right?
my God.
Yeah, so we need to be, instead of struggling, we didn't create the crab barrel, right? People want to say, oh, we're like crab. No, we didn't create the barrel. So we need to help each other climb out of those barrels, right? Um, every black woman's not going to be our friend, but we don't need to see them as our enemy either,
Mm.
right? How can we encourage each other? And everyone what doesn't want our help, but we can still be encouraging instead of tearing each other down, right? And it's a perennial struggle because we live in a society and in churches where we are encouraged to struggle against each other, not struggle with, right? Together.
Mm. Mm.
And I'd like for us, just recently I had to preach in a chapel here at CTS, right? And I didn't think that there was always a part of me, and that was on February 4th. That was my mom's birthday. She died in 2009, and
Mm.
I didn't think up till maybe a day before. I was like, hey, I don't feel like I want to preach, right? But I did, and I was first preparing that summer for myself, right?
Mm.
Because needing hope in this environment, hope isn't about, I'm clear and thankful to Miriam Kaba's book. We do this till we free us, right? That's the
Mm.
title of her book. We do this till we free us, right? That hope isn't about how we feel, but it is about what we do despite how we feel, right? Right? We get up. We may not feel like getting up, going to our jobs, but we do, right? We do. I didn't feel like preaching that day, but I went through the process. We prepared a sermon, and I did, not because of how I feel, but because hope is, she states, hope is a discipline,
Mm.
right? So I don't have to. And she says she continues to do this work, not because everything she does comes out well, but because some things don't come out well, but you keep doing the work, right?
Mm.
You have
Yes.
you have disappointments, you have setbacks, but you keep doing the work. That is embodied hope. It is not about
Mm.
how we feel, right? So I keep that, I kept that in mind, even though I didn't feel like it. I said, come on, Mitzi, you can do this, right? And a part of, I preach, I have to do, I'm trying not to do, particularly after the stroke, trying to make sure that I'm tackling two things with one effort, right? And so
Mm.
I had written recently on Matthew 15, the story of the Canaanite woman, right? And I said, okay, so that essay will come out later this year in a book. But okay, let me preach on that, right? I don't need to be reinventing the wheel, right? And of course, it's not exactly the same as what I wrote because we grow, we change, we see things each time we come to a text, right? And so, and I did preach that the power is in us, right? God has put power in us. I know how much we love Jesus, right? But I like to think that God is bigger than Jesus. I know the church councils told us that they are the same. That's tradition. That God is bigger than Jesus. And in the scriptures, sometimes Jesus is a problem. Right? And if we cannot recognize when Jesus is a problem, and if he is our only, if he is the thing we are always imitating, right? And when he is a problem, then we will imitate his problems, right? We will embody the problems. And this is what I see in terms of the Canaanite woman, right? That we have power in us because we are in the image of God. I love John's Jesus, and not because people like to make him God, but because he continually says, "I'm not God," right? And when he says, "When I leave, you will do greater things than I have done." Now, if he is God, then why is he telling us that we will do greater things? Right? No, he recognized that he is not God, that God is Father, right? God has placed something in each of us, And the testimony of Jesus is we can do greater things. And of
Mm.
course, greater things, right? Not just as individuals, but collectively, right? Collectively. We must find a way to put aside our differences, right? And to come together collectively.
Yes.
Come together collectively, be a force. We are unstoppable. Evil can come together. If
Mm.
people with evil intentions come together, what's wrong with us?
Mm.
All right, what is wrong with us?
My God.
What is
My
wrong with us?
God.
And so, preaching that story and thinking about my own healthcare journey and this moment. The hope is, to me, the hope is that God has placed power in us. And what will we do? God is no respecter of persons. That's the hopeful thing. God is no respecter of persons, of gender, of race, of class, right? And in each of us is a power that we need to recognize, we need to respect, and we need to find a way to collectively move in the direction of justice and love and hope that doesn't leave people out, right?
Yes.
And that
Yes.
rejects evil, rejects hatred. And so,
Wow.
that's where I am. And find a way to do what we can. Our money speaks, right? That's part of the power in us, right? We have choice to decide where we spend our money, right? And
Mm-hmm.
where we put our efforts. And it's important. We have neglected that over the years. We have our vote matters. Our ancestors knew that, and we want to talk about people who want to talk about our vote doesn't count. It counted even less for our ancestors, but that didn't stop
Mm.
them. That didn't stop them. It didn't
Mm.
stop them. But now we have even more collective power, and we're sitting around talking about our vote doesn't count. I
My
mean,
God.
look, 50 cents toward a movement from 2 million people is $1 million.
Mm. Mm.
1 million people saying I won't vote is 1 million votes. We cannot, right? We cannot afford to move according to the way we feel, but according to what is at stake, right? Because I feel left out. Yes, we do. Because I feel forgotten. Yes, many of us do. And you have a right to feel that way. But move according to what is needed, which is justice and equality for all of us, not according to how we feel.
Wow. Powerful. That this what I'm hearing, uh, you are embodying what womanism is about.
Mm,
Can you talk more about your journey to and through womanism
mm,
as you were talking about all of these tenets of being in community and ancestral rituals and remembering and calling the ancestors and doing things in community and not individual. How did you get to that point, and then how did you flourish and move into this powerhouse of embodying womanism?
mm. I think it's a continual movement. I don't think it's an arrival. So I was introduced to womanism at Howard University School of Divinity, right? Kelly Brown Douglas was there at the time, and she taught a course on womanist theology. And also in Kane Hope Felder's class and New Testament courses, right? I was introduced to Renita Weems's Justice Sister Way, right?
Hmm.
That fueled many of us. Where had we read a book like that, right? Throughout
True.
throughout our lives, my life up to that point, in the church, I had never read a book like that centered us, that centered Black women, right? And our struggles to be sisters to each other, right?
Yes, yes.
Using the stories from the Bible, right? And our experiences, right? And so in Kelly Brown Douglas's class, before I went to get my master's at my MDiv at Howard, I had gone to Ohio State University in 84 to 86 to get a master's in Black Studies. And so I had the master's thesis, I had looked at cancer mortality and incidence rates among Black people in large counties with large Black populations in certain cities in Ohio, right? The largest Black population, like Cincinnati, Cleveland, right? Just startling some of the information I found about the healthcare system, and even finding a news article about where a white doctor says that his colleagues, right, that his colleagues don't even believe Black people deserve equal care, even if they have the insurance, right? Just
My
so
God.
yes, and so that stuck with me. And in Kelly Brown Douglas's class, we read, it really opened me up. We read her manuscript. The book hadn't been published, but her manuscript, Sexuality in the Black Church, right, is in the process of being published. And Emily Towns was invited in. So I'm being pushed beyond my conservative roots, right? And Black churches that are so queer phobic, right? So that's pushing me beyond my roots, and I was glad to be pushed because I was basically leaving that church, that conservatism behind. And Emily Towns is breaking the fine rate of death. That was really up my alley. Was she addresses, using a text from Joel, right, the prophet Joel, the healthcare disparities, and I'm like, oh my God, this is what has interest me is these things that are impacting systemically our community, right? And so I left Howard, really invited, but didn't go to Harvard. And there's no woman as professors at Harvard.
No.
There's no one in the feminist class. I took a feminist interpretation class, but I felt like in that class, womanism was being subsumed under feminism, that it was being treated as if it was inferior, right? And didn't like that. I did take African American interpretation with Alan Callahan, right? But not the same as taking a womanist class, right? And so let me say that so trying to get through the program, trying to just finish. It wasn't until after I got my finished my doctorate, started teaching, perhaps 4 years into teaching, that I started to get back to womanism, right? And started to find it's almost like your voice can be stifled in some of these programs, and you kind of have to recover it, right? And by voice, I know, of course, we all have speech and free speech, but by voice, I mean, what are you passionate about, right? And just trying to struggle and get through, I forgot what it was I was most passionate about, but teaching and needed to be most passionate about, but teaching in at Ashland Theological Seminary in the Detroit campus, where the majority of my students were Black women, right? It finally came to me where I was no longer putting together so many new syllabi, which takes up a lot of your time. And I mean, there were times where I taught 9 courses. I'm talking about. I'm like, what the heck? How did I survive? And at first, I was also working in the church too, in Oak Grove Church. It wasn't AME, but I was working yet. We're working as executive minister, and I had to quit that, because I felt women were being pitted against each other, and I needed to write. I wasn't. I didn't. And so all of that moment, right, brought me back to womanism, right? What it is my soul must have, right? What it is that's impacting the women in Detroit that I'm teaching, right? How can I can't teach like a white man, right?
Well,
As Renee Reeves said, many of us reading the Bible like oppressed white men, right? And so, it came to a point where, I'm not using any more of these texts, introductory texts by white men. I will curate, the articles that I can, by people of color, by women, to teach, and just started writing essays. And in 19, I was on a study leave. What is it? 19. I was talking about 19. It was 2000. When did I think it's about when did I Found God in Me come out? Well, anyway, I was on study leave, and I realized I had written a number of essays to bring together the first womanist biblical interpretation reader. And while on study leave, that wasn't my plan. That wasn't the project I was supposed to be working on. But I said, yeah, let me do this and bring together some other women, right? And so that was, that was the beginning of me finding my voice as a womanist biblical scholar. Yeah.
Okay, I see here, I think it was 2015. Let me see. I Found God in Me.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
20, yes, yes,
2015.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow, wow. So as we wind down and bring this to a close, one, I cannot thank you enough for your wisdom, and your words are going to have such a major impact on beloveds who will experience this podcast, not just listen, but experience this podcast and really call forth a reflection of communal prowess, of lifting as we climb, of working through adversity, including illness. I, speaking as a metastatic breast cancer survivor in active
Mm,
treatment.
mm,
So your work resonates with me with, looking at cancer numbers in predominantly Black communities. And, my dad had a massive stroke. So being an
mm,
advocate for heart health and things of that nature, I am just so grateful that your life is an example of how we push through adversity, how we do this in community and not just on our own in these white ideologies. It's about me, I can do it. You talked about your mom, you talked about people you met in seminary, you talked about people who saw things in you that you didn't see for yourself. It is so important, and that being vulnerable enough to be open so that people can see beyond, what is being shown in this physical. They're able
mm,
to look beyond and deeper into Mitzi J. Smith and say, no, I see this in you. So I thank you for sharing those posits of wisdom and how we as Black women are being called to respond in these trying times. And it's unfortunate that it takes this for us to come together in community and to respond. And we gonna be all right. As Kendrick
mm.
Lamar says, we gonna be all right because we are going to come together and
Yes.
build community. Absolutely. So if there was one thing that you could say that you would leave with the audience, I'm putting you on the spot, what would it be?
Mm. Yes, don't give up, right?
Mm,
Don't give up, don't give up. None of us should have to. We know that none of us should have to push through oppression, right? Oppression should not exist, but it is, and so we need to push through, but not alone, right? I remember when I was going through stroke, I say this, be there as much as we can, right? No one person can do it all, but we need to attempt to be there in the ways that we can be for each other. I remember Dr. Lisa Weaver was my colleague here at the time, and she said to me when I was decided I need to go to 911, call 911. She said, "No Black woman is going to go through this alone on my watch, not on my
mm,
watch." And so, yes, let us be. God said throughout the Hebrew Bible, it didn't start in Matthew. I am with you, and the way that God is with us is through us,
mm.
right? As we are with one another. So, thank you so much for reaching out. Thank you so much for the work you do, and God bless you as you continue to be a survivor. And may we all. Create a world where we can not just survive but thrive.
Wow. I speak your name, Reverend Dr. Mitzi J. Smith. I speak life. I speak continued hope. I speak continued example and leadership. Your sage, your wisdom, your presence as a griot is honored on today. And I thank you for sharing time with us and sharing your voice, your agency, what you have done, what you are doing, and what you are about to do, and how God is moving through each of us to do that, and not looking to others for our liberation, but looking to ourselves, not only individually, but as a part of Ubuntu. I am because you
Yes,
are.
yes,
So thank
yes.
you, beloved. I love you dearly. Thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting in the future.
Yes, love you too, sister. Take care.
Great. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Whew. Okay, let me get us back on target here. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, in summary, I hope that she's dope. She is dope. Um, I just need to take a deep breath. I wrote some quick notes. I hope that you were able to write down some notes. And if not, you can always go back to the podcast and really write down some of the books she mentioned and some of the just nuggets that she dropped. I did notice that her name was cut off on the graphic. So just bear with me for a minute because I do want to honor and make sure that y'all have her name and you see how I work and do all this stuff behind the scenes. But right now you're going to see it in real time because I don't have time to hide and do all that other stuff. So anyway, so one of the things, and please feel free to say what stood out for you in the chat as I am running through some things that I jotted down as we begin to close this podcast, as we end Black History Month, as the world knows it, but we know that we are Black History, 365, 24/7. One of the things that Dr. Smith said was, I am my mother and I'm not my mother. That was so powerful, and that it truly speaks to knowing who you are as a perfectly imperfect being, fully human and fully divine, and being able to embrace that and love yourself with unconditional positive regard and learn. There's always an opportunity to learn through the great, through the not so great, and anything in between. People see things before you see it. So surround yourself with people that are going to see your heart, your soul. Yeah, Tony, that was it. That was definitely it. Yeah, I had to take notes just now because listening intently and intensely, I couldn't write notes. I was just taking it all in, and whew, yeah, that was powerful. And people seeing things in you that you don't see for yourself, that comes from community. That comes from having your tribe. That when I was in seminary, I wrote, write the vision, make it plain. So I said I was going to graduate from seminary at a certain time. I was going to get my PhD. The things that I wrote down, everything came into fruition. But not only because I wrote it down, but I was able to write those things down because I had people in my circle that said, no, Tawana, maybe you should think about going this route. And I'm like, what? A PhD? Me? What? Who? What? So here we are, a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degree, and a PhD later, and I'm still repping Harlem every day, all day, because without that foundation, I wouldn't be here today. Tony says, and how people can see potential and greatness within before the reality hits itself. That is so powerful and speaks to the importance of having beloveds around you that can see, just see beyond the physical, and to see your gifts and your grace and your potential. Tony also said, and I'm at my desk doing homework and I had to stop because that all met me right where I am right now in this program. And I'm so grateful because getting a terminal degree is going to test your soul, because you are going to hear things from people that do not relate to you as a Black woman, as a Black person, as a Black beloved, they may want you to do things their way. And it don't work that way. This is my voice, my agency, and my brilliance, my voice matters. It matters. She mentioned a couple of books that I do want to memorialize on this for those who listen later. We do this till we free us. I didn't write down the author, but we do this till we free us. Renita Weems' book, Just the Sister Away. If you don't get any other book that I'm talking about right now, Reverend Dr. Renita Weems is straight no chaser. Just amazing. Breaking the Fine Rain of Death by Emily Towns. I have that book and I use that book when I am preparing for certain preaching moments, depending on the situation, the circumstance, the congregation. Emily Towns is just someone, she's amazing, along with the late Reverend Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon. Dr. Smith mentioned Kelly Brown Douglas, where one of her many books, Sexuality in the Church, I think it is. So these are books we have an opportunity to do more reading by us in order to navigate through these times and to separate ourselves from this hate, this vitriol, this evil, this racism, and as Dr. Smith mentioned, queer phobia, whether it's in the church, outside of the church, anyone that is non-white, and you know, the attack that is happening, the Black journalists and Black media being attacked. We can read together, we can share, and it will not be televised. It will not be televised. So we will have our book, you know, our book clubs, and have our Sunday brunches where we're just chopping it up with Black beloveds about what we're going to do, how we're going to invest together, start investment clubs and things of that nature. What hit me the most was about hope. Hope is not doing, you know, it's not about how you feel. Like if you feel good, then you have hope. Hope is about a discipline. Hope is when responding when things are at stake, when there is a challenge. So right now we are called to have hope. And I talk about Dr. Alan Bozak, who often quotes St. Augustine. Hope has 2 daughters, anger and courage, 2 beautiful daughters, anger and courage, anger at the way things are and the courage to ensure that they don't remain that way. So she spoke to that in a beautiful womanist way about hope isn't just feeling good. Hope isn't about what you feel. It's what you are called to do in response to adverse situations. And as Joy Reid, who did a masterclass on how to respond to evil, how to respond to racism, how to respond to misogynoir. Joy Reid showed up on her show full of joy, full of unapologetic truth telling. And at the end, she gave us a charge. And it's the charge that I give you today. We must keep doing the work, not the work of integration, not the work of capitalism, not the work of trying to fit in to a white ideology, but the work of standing on a firm foundation of who we are, our ancestors, all that we have been through and survived, those that died, and we don't want their blood still crying from the ground. We want them to heal as well as we heal and build community. We will find a way. We will do greater, doing this thing greater collectively. We will be the embodied hope of anger and courage. We will continue to separate ourselves. One thing that Dr. Smith mentioned was that she was the first Black woman to get her PhD in New Testament studies at Harvard. And we are tired of talking about being the first. I don't want to be the first in an organization or institution or corporation where you're not down for me and my survival and my thrival and my well-being. I don't want to be the first to check off your box. I don't want to be the first to build your church out of ruins and then you discard me. I don't want to be the one to come back and fix it and then you discard me. I don't want to be where I am not wanted, where I'm not honored, where I'm not revered, where I'm not respected. So we got to start building our own so that we are leading our own. Integration was probably one, and this is probably not a popular opinion, and I mean, I care, but I'm going to say it because I don't care. This is my thought. This is my experience. Integration was probably one of the worst things that happened in this country, because this is why I don't call or identify myself as African American, because it centers American whiteness and then adds African as an afterthought. Why can't we all be American? If I was born in America, and you stole me from my country, so I can't even say that what part of West Africa I'm from, outside of the crazy ancestry thing that tells you 10% this, 5% that. I need to know my tribe so that I can say, yes, I am American, but I am from. Just like I talk about where I live now, it is by way of Harlem. All the time, period. So the charge for us is to do the work, to keep doing the work, and not individually as white ideology does, but collectively, because we heal in community, we grow in community, we evolve in community, we thrive in community. We can take our $2 trillion of buying power and build communities. Yes, they have burnt it down in the past. Yes, they have now, fired and canceled shows, and we're going to build our own. We'll have our own networks. We'll have our own opportunities to share. We will follow Black beloveds. So share this. Tell folk, follow Black podcasters, Black women podcasters, follow those on YouTube who are creating their own broadcast channels and shows. And yeah, sometimes it takes stuff like this for us to wake up and to realize that we have been trying to assimilate and reject a system, and it got us all twisted and fucked up, right? Trying to fit in and not fit in. It doesn't work that way. We are both and people, but not like that. Not trying to fit into a racist, classist, sexist, capitalistic, narcissistic, hateful system. We need to now disconnect ourselves from that. And how do we do that? We can still do that with our vote. We can still do that with our $2 trillion buying power. We can still do that with building institutions, because they did it in the mid 1800s when we built schools and churches and businesses and, started, our beloveds were the first millionaires, and we can still do it now. We have so much access and so much opportunity. We now just need to take advantage of it. So this is our time. I am Dr. Tad, your host and your curator for Tuesdays with Tawana, and I hope that this was enlightening and a blessing to you. I want to thank Reverend Dr. Mitzi J. Smith for her wisdom and her knowledge. I could have talked to her for hours, and I am grateful for the nuggets and the authenticity that she shared with us during this moment. And I also want to continue to lift up Joy Ann Reid and the other journalists from past and present. Melissa Harris Perry, Tiffany Cross, Don Lemon, just the list goes on and on and on. Let us continue to support our beloveds for us and by us. And I understand all kinfolk ain't skinfolk, but Dr. Smith also dropped another nugget. I know everybody ain't going to be down for the cause, but it doesn't mean that I have to make them my enemy, because that then misdirects my energy, my healing energy, to build community. So I don't need to make them my enemy. I may not rock with you, I may not fuck with you, but you don't have to be my enemy. We just not on the same page. But when you're ready and you down for the liberation, we might invite you to the cookout. This is Dr. Tad, Tuesdays with Tawana, every Tuesday, 10 o'clock p.m., live right here on YouTube. You'll get it on your podcast platforms on tomorrow, Spotify, Apple, or anywhere you listen to your podcast. Thank you for always rocking with me. Thank you for your contribution, because I cannot be who I am and do what I do for 5 years without you, without your love, your support, your prayers, your engagement, your comments. I learned so much from you, and I hope that this space continues to be a space that empowers you, that enlightens you, that shows you unconditional positive regard as we stay Black. 10 toes down. I love y'all, beloveds. We out. Later.